The rain pattered against the hospital window, creating a soft rhythm that almost, but not quite, drowned out my daughter's hungry cries. My fingers trembled as I tried to adjust her tiny pink hat. 3 days old and already so perfect, with those unmistakable dark eyes that made my heart both swell and shrink with every glance. "Shh, Sophia," I whispered, the name still foreign on my tongue. "Everything's going to be okay." I was lying, of course. Nothing had been okay since that night 10 months ago, when I'd made the catastrophic mistake of letting Alessandro Vitali into my life. Into my bed. The nurse pushed open the door with her hip, clipboard in hand, smiling that same practiced smile they all wore. "How are we doing, Ms. Bennett?" "Fine," I lied again, adjusting my position on the bed, wincing at the pain that shot through my lower body. Childbirth was brutal, but the fear coursing through my veins was worse. "Just need your signature on these last forms, and you'll be all set for discharge tomorrow morning." She handed me a pen, pointing to the highlighted sections. "Birth certificate information has been processed. Father's section has been left blank, as requested." My heart stuttered. "You're sure it's blank? There's no way anyone could—" "It's hospital policy, Ms. Bennett. You chose not to list the father, so that section remains blank in our system." She paused, her expression softening. "Though I should mention, he would still have legal rights if he ever came forward and established paternity." The words sent a chill down my spine. I forced a smile and signed where indicated, my signature a shaky scrawl. Sophia whimpered again, and I instinctively pulled her closer to my chest. "Just buzz if you need anything else," the nurse said, retrieving the clipboard before quietly exiting the room. Alone again with my daughter, I let the tears fall. How had I ended up here? 6 months ago, I was a promising sous chef at La Stella, one of New York's most exclusive Italian restaurants. Now I was a single mother running from the most dangerous man I'd ever met. I hadn't known who Alessandro was when I started working at La Stella. To me, he was just the intimidating, immaculately dressed owner who rarely spoke to staff, but whose presence changed the very air in the room. I'd feel his eyes on me sometimes, dark and unreadable, and I'd work twice as hard, desperate to prove my worth in a kitchen dominated by men. The night everything changed had been ordinary enough. A busy Friday service, the kitchen a controlled chaos of shouting, steam, and the relentless tick of the clock. I was plating a delicate risotto when Chef Marco knocked into me, sending the dish crashing to the floor in an explosion of ceramic and saffron-scented rice. "Useless girl," Marco had spat, his face contorted with rage. It wasn't the first time he'd targeted me, the only woman in his kitchen, but something in me snapped that night. "It was your fault," I'd fired back, voice trembling but clear. "You bumped into me." The kitchen fell silent, all eyes on us. Marco stepped closer, looming over me, when a cool voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Is there a problem?" Alessandro Vitali stood in the doorway to the kitchen, something I'd never seen before. Owners didn't come into the kitchen during service. But there he was, in a suit that probably cost more than 6 months of my rent, his dark eyes taking in the scene with frightening calculation. "No problem, Mr. Vitali," Marco stammered, immediately backing away from me. "Just a minor accident." Alessandro's gaze shifted to me, and I felt it like a physical touch. "And you? What do you have to say?" Everyone was staring, waiting for me to apologize, to back down. But that same reckless courage that had made me challenge Marco pushed me forward. "He bumped into me and then blamed me for the mistake," I said, meeting Alessandro's eyes directly. "It happens often." A muscle twitched in Alessandro's jaw. He said nothing for a long moment, then glanced at his watch, a gleaming thing that caught the light. "My office." "After service," he said to me, before turning to Marco. "You too." With that, he was gone, leaving behind a scent of expensive cologne and palpable tension. "You're dead," Marco hissed at me when service finally ended 3 hours later. I'd shakily cleaned my station, certain I was about to lose the job I'd fought so hard for. On trembling legs, I made my way to Alessandro's office on the top floor, above the restaurant. The hallway was silent, plushly carpeted in deep red. 2 men in dark suits stood outside a heavy wooden door. They didn't speak, simply nodded at my approach and opened the door. Alessandro's office was nothing like I'd imagined. Instead of the ostentatious luxury I expected, it was almost austere. Dark wood, leather, and glass. A single painting on the wall, something modern and vaguely disturbing, all sharp lines and blood reds. He sat behind a massive desk, writing something in a leather-bound book. He didn't look up when I entered, nor did he acknowledge Marco's arrival moments later. Finally, he closed the book and leaned back in his chair. "Marco," he said, his voice deceptively soft. "You've been with me for 5 years." "Yes, sir," Marco replied, standing straighter. "In those 5 years, I've had to replace 11 female staff members because of complaints about your behavior." Marco paled. "Sir, I don't like waste, Marco. Training new staff is expensive." "Talented staff, even more so." Alessandro's eyes flicked to me, then back to Marco. "Ms. Bennett here has exceptional reviews from customers. Her risotto is apparently the best thing on the menu." I blinked in surprise. I hadn't known he was aware of my cooking, let alone my name. "She's adequate," Marco muttered. Alessandro's expression didn't change, but something in the air did. "You're fired, Marco. Collect your things. My men will escort you out." Marco's face contorted with rage and disbelief. "Because of her? She's nothing. Just some girl who—" "Because of you," Alessandro cut him off, voice like ice. "Because you cost me money and talent. Now get out before I decide to express my disappointment more thoroughly." The threat hung in the air, unspecified but chilling. Marco shot me a look of pure hatred before storming out. Left alone with Alessandro, I felt the weight of his attention like a physical thing. He studied me for a long, uncomfortable moment. "Sit," he finally said, gesturing to the chair across from him. I sat, hands folded tightly in my lap. "How long have you worked here, Ms. Bennett?" 11 months, I replied, proud that my voice didn't shake. "And before that? Culinary school? Small restaurants in Boston?" He nodded, as if confirming something he already knew. "Your application said you specialized in Northern Italian cuisine." "Yes, my grandmother was from Milan." A spark of interest flickered in his dark eyes. "Is that so?" I nodded, unsure why it mattered. "You're now head chef," he said abruptly. Effective immediately. My mouth fell open. What? But I've never run a kitchen before. You have talent. The rest can be learned." He stood, moving around the desk with fluid grace. Up close, he was even more imposing. Tall, broad-shouldered, with features that seemed carved from stone, handsome in a dangerous, forbidding way. "I don't understand," I said weakly. "What don't you understand?" He leaned against the desk, too close now, his cologne wrapping around me, sandalwood and something darker. "Why me?" His lips curved into something not quite a smile. "I reward loyalty and courage, Ms. Bennett. You stood up to Marco when others wouldn't. That interests me." There was something in the way he said "interests" that sent a shiver down my spine, not entirely from fear. "Thank you for the opportunity," I managed. "Emma," he said, my first name in his mouth sounding strangely intimate. "May I call you Emma?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. "Come to dinner tomorrow night. We'll discuss your vision for the menu." It wasn't a request. I knew that, even then. "Yes, Mr. Vitali. Alessandro," he corrected, reaching out to brush an escaped strand of hair from my face. His fingers were warm against my skin, the touch lingering just a second too long. "I think we're going to work very well together, Emma." How naive I'd been, how completely, stupidly blind. Sophia's tiny hand wrapped around my finger, pulling me back to the present. Outside the hospital window, the rain had turned to a downpour, sheets of water obscuring the New York skyline. "We're leaving tomorrow," I whispered to her. "Far away from here. From him." I'd already packed what little I owned in a single suitcase. The bus ticket to Portland was hidden in the lining of my wallet. My savings, pitifully small after medical bills, would have to last until I found work. A soft knock at the door made me jump. "Delivery for Emma Bennett," called a female voice. My heart raced as the door opened to reveal an orderly holding an enormous arrangement of white lilies. She placed them on the windowsill, handed me a small envelope, and left. With trembling fingers, I opened it, already knowing who they were from. The card inside held just 2 words in elegant script: Congratulations, Tesoro. I dropped the card as if it had burned me. How had he found out? I'd been so careful. Left in the middle of the night, changed my phone, paid for everything in cash, unless... My blood turned to ice as I remembered the nurse's words about the birth certificate. Had someone at the hospital contacted him? Was there a leak in the system? I reached for the call button, desperate to speak to someone, anyone who could help me leave now, tonight, this minute. And then I heard it. The distinctive click of expensive shoes on the hospital's linoleum floor. The low murmur of deferential voices in the hallway. He was here. I clutched Sophia tighter to my chest as the door swung open. 2 men in dark suits entered first, scanning the room with practiced efficiency, and then he filled the doorway, tall and imposing in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. Alessandro Vitali, the man I'd fled from, the father of my child, the head of New York's most powerful crime family. His dark eyes locked onto mine, then dropped to the bundle in my arms. "Emma," he said, his voice exactly as I remembered, low and smooth, with that faint Italian accent that grew stronger when he was angry. "Did you really think I wouldn't find out about my child?" Time seemed to stop as Alessandro stepped fully into the room. His men positioned themselves discreetly by the door, faces impassive. One of them, Anton, I recognized with a jolt, gave me a small nod. He'd always been kinder than the others during my time at La Stella. "Please leave," I whispered, tightening my grip on Sophia. She squirmed against me, making little mewling sounds that tore at my heart. Alessandro's eyes never left the baby. "Is it a boy or girl? She's none of your concern," I said, trying to inject strength into my voice. "You need to go before I call security." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Security won't come, Tesoro. This floor is temporarily understaffed." The casual way he said it sent chills down my spine. Of course he would have arranged everything perfectly. Alessandro Vitali left nothing to chance. He moved closer, each step deliberate. I pressed myself back against the pillows, as if I could somehow melt into the hospital bed and disappear. "May I see her?" he asked, his voice surprisingly gentle. "No." His jaw tightened at my defiance, but he stopped his approach. "You named her?" I hesitated, seeing no harm in answering. "Sophia." Something flickered in his eyes, recognition, perhaps even approval. "After your grandmother?" I nodded, surprised he remembered that detail from our conversations. There had been so many late nights in his office, planning menus, discussing recipes, gradually crossing the line from professional to personal. I'd told him about my Nonna Sophia, her recipes, her stories of Milan. "It suits her," he said, then added softly in Italian, "Sophia Vitali." "No," I cut in sharply. "Her name is Sophia Bennett, my name." Alessandro's expression hardened. "We both know that's not true, Emma. You have no claim to her. I never put your name on the birth certificate." "Didn't you?" He reached into his jacket and withdrew a folded document, holding it out to me. My stomach dropped. With one hand still cradling Sophia, I reluctantly took the paper and unfolded it. It was a copy of Sophia's birth certificate, and there, in the space for the father's name, was clearly printed, Alessandro Marco Vitali. "This is impossible," I whispered. I left it blank. The nurse confirmed. "Do you really believe anything happens in this city without my knowledge?" He interrupted, taking the document back and carefully returning it to his jacket pocket. "Especially concerning something as important as the birth of my firstborn?" I felt ill. "How long have you known?" "About the pregnancy? Since the day after you left." He moved to the window, looking out at the rain-drenched city. "About the birth?" "I received a call while you were still in delivery." Tears of frustration burned in my eyes. "Why can't you just let us go? You don't want a child. You don't want a family." Alessandro turned, his expression unreadable. "You don't get to decide what I want, Emma." "I know exactly what you are," I spat. "What your business really is. The things you've done." The atmosphere in the room shifted, tension crackling like electricity before a storm. The men by the door straightened almost imperceptibly. "Careful, Tesoro," Alessandro said softly. "You're speaking about things you don't understand." "I understand enough," I saw the guns. I overheard the conversations. I'm not stupid. He approached the bed again, this time not stopping until he stood directly beside me. Slowly, deliberately, he reached down toward Sophia. I jerked away. "Don't touch her. She is my daughter," he said, each word enunciated with precision. "Mine. You think I would hurt her? My own blood? I think you'd hurt anyone who stood in your way." Something like pain flashed across his face. So quickly I might have imagined it. "You really believe that of me?" The question caught me off guard. Did I? In all our time together, Alessandro had never once raised a hand to me, had never even raised his voice. His anger was always a cold, controlled thing, far more frightening than any shouting. "I believe you're dangerous," I said finally. "To me. To her." Alessandro's gaze dropped to Sophia again, who had fallen asleep against my chest, her tiny face peaceful and unaware of the storm raging around her. "May I hold her?" he asked again, and this time there was something in his voice I'd never heard before. Vulnerability, perhaps. "Please, Emma." That please undid me. In all our time together, I'd rarely heard him use the word. Alessandro didn't ask, he commanded. Against my better judgment, I carefully shifted Sophia in my arms, watching his face as I slowly extended our daughter toward him. The transformation that came over him was astonishing. His usually hard features softened as he took Sophia with a gentleness I wouldn't have believed possible from those hands. He cradled her expertly against his chest, supporting her head with surprising confidence. "You've held babies before," I observed, unable to hide my surprise. A corner of his mouth lifted. "I have many nieces and nephews. Family is everything to us. To us. To the Vitalis. To the organization I'd fled from the moment I realized what it truly was." "She has my mother's nose," he murmured, running a finger delicately over Sophia's features. "But your eyes, I think. The shape, maybe. The color is all yours." The words slipped out before I could stop them. His gaze met mine, something warm and intimate passing between us that made my heart race in a way that had nothing to do with fear. "Why did you run, Emma?" he asked quietly. "The truth." I looked away, unable to bear the intensity of his stare. "You know why." "I want to hear you say it." I took a deep breath, gathering my courage. "I found the gun in your desk drawer. I overheard your conversation with Salvatore about the shipment and the competition that needed to be permanently resolved." My voice trembled slightly. "And then one of your men, Dino, saw me listening. He told me..." Alessandro's expression darkened. "Told you what?" "That you were the head of the Vitali crime family. That La Stella was just a front, that people who crossed you ended up in the East River." I swallowed hard, and when I realized I was pregnant, I couldn't bring a child into that world. He was silent for a long moment, still gently rocking Sophia. "Dino was fired the next day," he finally said. "For frightening you, for making you run." "Is what he said true?" Alessandro didn't answer directly. "You were never in danger from me, Emma. Never. You are, under my protection." "I don't want your protection," I said, though the words lacked conviction even to my own ears. "I want freedom. I want a normal life for my daughter." "Our daughter." He handed Sophia back to me with the same gentle care. "And what makes you think I can't give her a normal life?" I laughed bitterly. "Normal? You call what you do normal? I call it business," he replied evenly. "A business that provides very well for family. I won't have her grow up surrounded by violence and crime." Alessandro's expression hardened. "So instead you would have her grow up without a father? In poverty? Running from place to place?" He gestured at my small bag in the corner. "What's your plan, Emma? Where were you going to take her?" I remained silent, unwilling to reveal my plans. He sighed, running a hand through his dark hair, a rare gesture of frustration. "Portland, Oregon," he said, making my blood freeze. "One-way bus ticket, leaving tomorrow morning. How did you..." "It doesn't matter." He cut me off, straightening his already perfect cuffs. "That plan is no longer viable." Anger flared in me, burning through the fear. "You don't get to decide that. You don't own me, Alessandro." "No," he agreed, surprising me. "I don't. But I do have legal rights to my daughter, as that birth certificate proves. The implication was clear. He could take her from me if he wanted to. My arms tightened protectively around Sophia. I won't let you, I whispered fiercely. It doesn't have to be a fight, Tesoro. His voice softened as he used that endearment again, treasure. I have a proposal. Suspicion coiled in my stomach. What kind of proposal? Come back to New York with me. There's a penthouse in my building, separate from my own residence, private, secure. You and Sophia will live there. You'll want for nothing. I stared at him. You want to keep us like pets? In a gilded cage? His jaw tightened at the insult. I want my daughter in my life. I want her safe. And despite what you may believe, I want you safe as well. Why would I ever agree to that? Because the alternative is a legal battle you cannot win, he said bluntly. I have resources you cannot imagine, Emma. The best lawyers. Judges who owe me favors. You'd really do that? Fight me for custody? If necessary. His dark eyes held mine, but I would prefer not to. The worst part was that I believed him. Alessandro never made threats he wasn't prepared to follow through on. And what happens in this arrangement? I just live in your building, bring Sophia to visit whenever you demand? For how long? For as long as necessary, he replied. Until we come to a more permanent arrangement. My heart skipped a beat. Meaning what, exactly? He didn't answer directly. You'll have full staff at your disposal. A nanny, if you wish. Security, of course. An allowance for whatever you need. I don't want your money. Sophia deserves the best, he countered. The best schools. The best opportunities. Everything I can provide. I looked down at my daughter's sleeping face. So perfect and innocent. What kind of life could I truly offer her on my own? Cramped apartments, daycare I could barely afford, constant worrying about bills and safety. And what about me? I asked quietly. What do you expect from me in this arrangement? Something heated flared in Alessandro's eyes. Nothing you aren't willing to give, Emma. The air between us seemed to thicken with unspoken memories, his hands on my body, his mouth against my skin. For all his faults, all his sins, I couldn't deny that what we'd had was real. Electric. Consuming. I'd want to work, I said, trying to clear my head of those dangerous thoughts, to cook again. The position of head chef at La Stella remains open, he said. No one else has lived up to my standards since you left. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it all. You expect me to just pick up where I left off, after everything? I expect you to do what's best for our daughter, he replied. And for yourself. Sophia stirred in my arms, her tiny face scrunching up before relaxing again. I gazed down at her, overwhelmed by love and fear in equal measure. I need time to think, I said finally. Alessandro checked his watch, a different one from what I remembered, but equally expensive. You have until tomorrow morning, when you're discharged. And if I say no? If I run again? His expression turned grim. Don't make me your enemy, Emma. Not when I'm trying to be reasonable. The threat hung in the air between us, all the more frightening for being unspoken. Your car will be waiting at the main entrance at 9, he continued. Anton will escort you. He gestured toward the man at the door, who nodded slightly in acknowledgement. And if I'm not there? I challenged. Alessandro moved closer, unexpectedly reaching out to brush a tear from my cheek that I hadn't even realized had fallen. You will be, he said softly, because you're smart, and because deep down, you know I'm right. He leaned forward, his lips brushing my forehead in the ghost of a kiss. She needs both of us, Emma. Without waiting for my response, he straightened and moved toward the door. Rest. You look exhausted. I was. Bone deep, soul-crushingly tired, but I couldn't let him see that weakness. Tomorrow, then, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. At the door, he paused and looked back, his gaze dropping once more to Sophia. Something almost tender crossed his features before his usual mask slipped back into place. Welcome to the world, little one, he murmured in Italian. Then to me, in English, she's perfect, Emma. You did well. With that, he was gone, his men following silently behind him. Only the lingering scent of his cologne and the enormous bouquet of lilies remained as evidence he'd been there at all. I stared at the closed door, mind racing. I could still run, find another way out of the hospital, change the plan. But deep down, I knew the truth. Alessandro had found me once. He would find me again. And next time, he might not be so reasonable. Sleep eluded me that night. I lay awake. Sophia nestled in the hospital bassinet beside my bed, watching shadows play across the ceiling. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Alessandro's face. The way he'd looked holding our daughter, a tenderness I hadn't believed him capable of. By morning, exhaustion had settled into my bones, but my decision was made. The nurse arrived early, cheerful and oblivious to the turmoil inside me. "Ready to go home, Ms. Bennett? All your discharge paperwork is processed." Home. The word felt hollow now. "Yes," I said, mechanically going through the motions. Changing into the loose dress I'd packed, carefully dressing Sophia in her going-home outfit, listening to the nurse's instructions about recovery and newborn care. At precisely 8:50, there was a knock at the door. Anton entered, his imposing frame somehow less threatening in daylight. Behind him was a woman I didn't recognize, middle-aged, with kind eyes and an efficient manner. "Ms. Bennett," Anton nodded respectfully. "This is Maria. She's a registered nurse and will be assisting with the baby." I bristled immediately. "I don't need Mr. Vitali's orders," Anton cut in gently but firmly. "For both your comfort and safety." Maria stepped forward, her smile professional but warm. "I've been working with the Vitali family for 15 years, Ms. Bennett. I helped raise Mr. Vitali's nieces and nephews." She glanced at Sophia. "She's beautiful. May I?" Something in her manner, genuine, maternal, made me relent. I carefully handed over my daughter, watching like a hawk as Maria expertly checked her over. "Perfect," she pronounced, wrapping Sophia securely in her blanket before returning her to me. "The car is waiting. I have a proper car seat installed." Of course, Alessandro would have thought of everything, down to the last detail. The hospital corridor felt endless as we walked. Maria slightly ahead, Anton behind. A few nurses glanced our way, quickly averting their eyes when Anton looked in their direction. I wondered how much they knew, how much Alessandro had arranged. Outside, the morning was bright and crisp, autumn sunlight glinting off buildings still wet from yesterday's rain. A sleek black SUV with tinted windows waited at the curb. The driver, another of Alessandro's men whose name I couldn't recall, stepped out immediately, opening the rear door. The interior was luxurious, with soft leather seats and what looked like bulletproof glass separating the driver's compartment. A top-of-the-line infant car seat was installed in the center of the back row. "Allow me," Maria said, taking Sophia and expertly securing her in the seat, checking and double-checking the straps. I hesitated at the door, that old instinct to run screaming inside me. But where would I go? How far would I get with a newborn and no money? Anton seemed to read my thoughts. "It's the right decision, Ms. Bennett," he said quietly. "For both of you." I looked up at him, searching his face. "Is it? You know him better than I do. What kind of man is he, really?" Anton's expression remained carefully neutral. "Mr. Vitali is complicated, but I've worked for him for 12 years. And I've never seen him as invested in anyone as he is in you and the baby." He paused. "That means something in our world." "Our world, not mine." "Never mine." I climbed into the SUV, settling beside Sophia's car seat. Maria took the seat on the other side, while Anton rode in front with the driver. As we pulled away from the hospital, I felt a strange mixture of dread and relief. At least for now, I didn't have to run anymore. The drive through Manhattan was surreal. Streets I'd walked countless times as a struggling chef looked different from behind the tinted windows of Alessandro's car. We headed uptown, eventually turning onto a tree-lined street of exclusive buildings with doormen and awnings. The SUV pulled into a private underground garage beneath one of the most imposing buildings, all limestone and discreet luxury. 2 more security men were waiting as we emerged from the vehicle. "This way, please," one of them said, leading us to a private elevator that required both a key card and a fingerprint scan. "My fingerprint won't," I began. "You've been added to the system," the guard said, taking my free hand and gently pressing my thumb to the scanner. The light flashed green, and the elevator doors slid open. Inside, Anton pressed the button for the 31st floor. Mr. Vitali's residence is the penthouse on 35, he explained. Yours is 31, the entire floor. The elevator was swift and silent. When the doors opened, they revealed a foyer of cream marble and subtle lighting. Anton stepped forward, placing my thumb on another scanner beside an elegant wooden door. This registers as your entry point, he explained. Only you, Maria, and Mr. Vitali have access, for security. The door swung open to reveal a space that stole my breath. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased a panoramic view of Central Park and the Manhattan skyline. The apartment was massive, decorated in a palette of soft grays, blues, and whites. Modern but warm, with none of the ostentatious luxury I'd half expected. This way, Maria said gently, leading me past the open-concept living area into a hallway. The first door opened into a nursery that made my heart clench. Pale yellow walls, a white crib with delicate bedding, a plush rocking chair by the window, shelves filled with books and toys. A hand-painted mural of an Italian countryside covered one wall. When did he... I couldn't finish the question. Mr. Vitali commissioned it the day after you left, Maria answered quietly. He knew you were pregnant before you did, I think. I turned to her in shock. That's impossible. She smiled slightly. Mr. Vitali notices everything, Miss Bennett, especially about people he cares for. The words echoed strangely in my head. We continued the tour. A master suite with a bed that looked cloud-soft and a bathroom bigger than my entire former apartment, a guest room, a study lined with bookshelves, and finally a kitchen that made me stop in my tracks. It was a chef's dream, professional-grade everything, from the massive gas range to the double ovens, the expansive marble countertops to the walk-in refrigerator. Copper pots hung from a rack above the island, gleaming in the morning light. He remembered, I whispered, running my fingers over the countertop. We'd talked about this once, late at night in his office, my dream kitchen. Every detail was exactly as I'd described. Your personal items have been moved in, Anton said, gesturing to the master bedroom, and the refrigerator and pantry are fully stocked. Moved in? I turned to him, alarmed. From where? Your apartment on Bleecker Street, he replied, as if this were perfectly normal. Mr. Vitali had it maintained after you left. The violation of privacy should have angered me, but I was too exhausted to feel anything but resignation. Of course Alessandro had kept my apartment. Of course he'd expected me to return. Sophia began to fuss, her tiny face scrunching up in preparation for a cry. She's hungry, I said, moving to the couch and settling myself to nurse her. Maria nodded. I'll prepare something for you to eat. You need your strength. As she busied herself in the kitchen, Anton cleared his throat. Mr. Vitali will visit this evening to check that you've settled in, around 7. My heart jumped at the news. That wasn't part of our agreement. There was no formal agreement, Ms. Bennett, Anton replied evenly. Just an understanding that you would return to New York with your daughter. As if summoned by our conversation, my phone, which I hadn't even realized was in my purse, chimed with a text message. Unknown number. The apartment is acceptable? How had he gotten my new number? I'd only purchased the burner phone a week ago. I stared at the screen, debating whether to respond. A second message appeared. I can see you've read this, Emma. I suppressed a shiver. With one hand still supporting Sophia at my breast, I awkwardly typed a reply. Yes, it's acceptable. His response was immediate. Good. We'll discuss terms this evening. Terms. As if this were a business transaction. Perhaps to him, it was. I didn't reply, turning my attention back to Sophia, who nursed contentedly, oblivious to the storm clouds gathering around us. Maria brought a tray with a light meal, a perfect omelet, fresh fruit, crusty bread still warm from the oven. My stomach growled, reminding me I hadn't eaten properly in days. You should rest after you eat, she said. I can watch the little one while you take a shower. Maybe a nap. The thought of sleep was tempting, but I shook my head. I'm not comfortable. I understand, she cut in gently. It's normal to be protective with your first. I'll just sit with you then, help if you need it. Something about her calm, no-nonsense manner reminded me of my grandmother. I found myself relaxing slightly in her presence. The day passed in a blur of feeding, changing, and brief moments of sleep whenever Sophia allowed. True to her word, Maria was an unobtrusive but helpful presence, showing me little tricks for soothing the baby and making sure I ate and drank enough. As evening approached, my anxiety mounted. I stood in the master bathroom, staring at my reflection in the enormous mirror. I looked pale, tired, my body still swollen from pregnancy and birth. I'd managed a quick shower and found clothes in the closet that must have come from my old apartment, though I noticed several new items with price tags still attached, in a size that would accommodate my post-pregnancy body. Another of Alessandro's presumptions that should have angered me, but instead left me feeling strangely cared for. At precisely 7 o'clock, the apartment's intercom chimed. Maria answered it, spoke quietly, then came to find me in the nursery where I was putting a freshly changed Sophia in a clean onesie. "Mr. Vitali is here," she said. I nodded, gathering Sophia into my arms like a shield. Alessandro entered without knocking. The apartment was his property, after all. He'd changed from the suit of yesterday into more casual attire, dark jeans and a charcoal sweater that somehow looked just as expensive and tailored as his usual business wear. His eyes found me immediately, scanning me from head to toe as if checking for damage. "You look better," he said by way of greeting, less exhausted. "That's what happens when armed men aren't threatening to take your child," I replied, unable to keep the bite from my tone. The corner of his mouth twitched, in amusement or annoyance, I couldn't tell. "Maria, Anton, leave us," he said without looking away from me. Maria hesitated. "Ms. Bennett hasn't eaten dinner yet." I was about to. "I've brought dinner," Alessandro cut in smoothly, "from La Stella, Emma's favorites." Only then did I notice the bags Anton had set on the kitchen counter before departing. When they were gone, Alessandro approached slowly, his eyes on Sophia. "May I?" he asked, extending his arms. I hesitated, then reluctantly handed her over. Just as yesterday, he held her with surprising ease, studying her sleeping face with what looked like genuine wonder. "She's already changed since yesterday," he murmured, her features more defined. "Babies change quickly," I said, watching them closely. "Especially in the first weeks." Alessandro looked up at me, his dark eyes intense. "Thank you for staying." Did I have a choice? "We always have choices, Emma. Some are just more difficult than others." He moved to the sofa, settling with Sophia still in his arms. I remained standing, arms crossed over my chest. "Join me," he said, not quite an order, but not quite a request either. I sat at the opposite end of the sofa, maintaining as much distance as possible. "Are you recovering well? Any complications from the birth?" he asked. The question caught me off guard with its genuine concern. "I'm fine." It was straightforward as these things go. He nodded, eyes returning to Sophia. "I've arranged for the top pediatrician on the Upper East Side to visit tomorrow, and a postpartum specialist for you." "I don't need—" "It's not negotiable," he interrupted, his tone firmer. "Your health and hers are paramount." I bit back a retort, reminding myself of my precarious position. Push too hard, and he might revoke whatever freedoms he was willing to grant. "You mentioned terms," I said instead. "What exactly do you want from this arrangement?" Alessandro shifted Sophia to his shoulder, patting her back gently when she squirmed, direct as always. "It's one of the things I admired about you from the beginning. The terms, Alessandro." He studied me for a moment, then nodded. "Simple enough. You and Sophia live here. You return to your position at La Stella when you're ready. 4 weeks from now, perhaps 6. Whenever your doctors clear you, Sophia will have round-the-clock security and care from staff of your choosing, approved by me. And you? I'll visit regularly, have dinner with you both, spend time with my daughter." "Just dinner? Just visits?" His eyes darkened. "What are you asking, Emma?" "I'm asking if you expect me to resume our previous relationship." The air between us thickened with unspoken tension. "I expect nothing you aren't willing to give," he said finally, echoing his words from the hospital. "But I won't pretend I don't want you. That hasn't changed." Heat rushed to my face. "This isn't about us. It's about Sophia. It's about all of us," he corrected. "We're a family now, whether you accept that yet or not." Family. The word hung between us, laden with meaning. "You're not what she needs in a father," I said quietly. "Not with what you do, who you are." Alessandro's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice calm for Sophia's sake. You know very little about what I do, Emma, or who I really am. I know enough. He shook his head slightly. You know pieces. Fragments you weren't meant to see. Then tell me, I challenged. Tell me I'm wrong about the Vitali family business. For a long moment, he was silent, his fingers gently stroking Sophia's back. Then, with a sigh that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside him, he spoke. My family has interests in real estate, shipping, restaurants, nightclubs, all legitimate. He met my gaze directly. We also have interests that operate outside conventional legal boundaries. I won't insult your intelligence by denying that. I appreciated the honesty, even as it confirmed my worst fears. But, he continued, what you need to understand is the separation I maintain between those worlds. My home, this building, these residences, they are untouched by that side of the business. As is La Stella. As you will be. As Sophia will be. You can't compartmentalize like that, I argued. The danger follows you. It doesn't, he said with absolute conviction. Not here. Not to my family. That is the one rule that everyone in our world respects, Emma. Family is sacred. Protected. I wanted to believe him. Some foolish, vulnerable part of me desperately wanted to accept his assurances that we could exist in a safe bubble, untouched by the darkness of his other life. But I knew better. What about your enemies? I asked. The competition I heard you discussing with Salvatore? Alessandro's expression hardened. They would never dare touch my family. The retaliation would be absolute. The cold certainty in his voice sent a chill through me, reminding me exactly who I was dealing with. That's supposed to comfort me? That you'd kill anyone who threatened us? Yes, he replied simply. It should. Sophia squirmed in his arms, making small fussing noises that would soon turn to cries. I reached for her automatically. She's hungry, I said, taking her from him. Alessandro watched as I adjusted my shirt to nurse, his eyes darkening with an emotion I couldn't quite name. Protectiveness? Possession? Something more complex? I should warm the food, he said abruptly, rising and moving to the kitchen. I blinked in surprise. Alessandro Vitali, feared Mafia boss, warming up takeout containers. The domesticity of the scene was so incongruous I almost laughed. As Sophia nursed, I watched him move efficiently around the kitchen, finding plates and utensils as if he'd been there before. Perhaps he had. This was his building, after all. How often did you come here? I asked. While you were having it prepared for us. He glanced over his shoulder. Every day. Sometimes twice a day, to check the progress. Why? He paused, considering the question. Because it needed to be perfect, for both of you. The sincerity in his voice caught me off guard. It was easy to dismiss Alessandro as simply dangerous, calculating, controlling. But moments like this complicated the picture, made him human in ways I didn't want to acknowledge. He returned with 2 plates of steaming food, my favorite risotto from La Stella, along with the roasted vegetable salad I'd created for the menu. Can you eat while feeding her? He asked, setting the plates on the coffee table. I nodded, shifting Sophia slightly to free one hand. Alessandro sat beside me, closer now, our thighs almost touching. Who's running the kitchen at La Stella now? I asked, more to break the tension than from real curiosity. Marcos. He's adequate, not as innovative as you. Alessandro took a bite of the risotto. He follows your recipes precisely, but they lack something when you're not there to make them. Soul, I said automatically. He looked at me, a rare smile touching his lips. Yes, exactly. We ate in surprisingly comfortable silence for a few minutes, the only sound Sophia's soft nursing and the clink of silverware on fine china. I hadn't realized how hungry I was until the first bite of that familiar risotto, rich with wild mushrooms and white truffle, finished with aged Parmigiano Reggiano, and just a hint of lemon zest. It's exactly as I remember, I said softly. I made sure of it. Alessandro's voice was equally quiet. The kitchen has been preserved exactly as you left it, your station untouched. I glanced at him. That's excessive. He shrugged. unapologetic. I knew you'd be back. Such confidence, I muttered. Not confidence. Determination. His eyes held mine. When I want something, Emma, I don't stop until I have it. The intensity in his gaze made me look away first. Sophia had finished nursing and was drifting off to sleep against my chest. I adjusted my clothing and carefully shifted her to my shoulder to burp. May I? Alessandro asked, setting down his empty plate and extending his hands. Reluctantly, I passed Sophia to him, watching as he expertly positioned her against his broad shoulder, one large hand supporting her tiny body, the other gently patting her back. The tenderness with which he handled her continued to surprise me. You're good with her, I admitted. Children respond to confidence, he said. And gentle handling. Is that how you approach everything? Confidence and gentle handling when necessary? His eyes met mine, understanding my deeper question. Not everything, but the things, the people, that matter most, yes. Sophia gave a small burp, and Alessandro smiled, a genuine smile that transformed his usually stern features. It was moments like these that had drawn me to him in the first place, those rare glimpses of the man behind the formidable exterior. She'll need to be changed soon, I said, finishing my food. I can do it. I raised an eyebrow skeptically. You doubt me? There was a hint of amusement in his voice. I can't quite picture the great Alessandro Vitali changing dirty diapers. He rose smoothly, Sophia still securely in his arms. Then allow me to surprise you, Tesoro. I followed him to the nursery, watching in disbelief as he efficiently laid Sophia on the changing table, gathered supplies, and proceeded to change her diaper with practiced ease. He spoke softly to her in Italian the entire time, terms of endearment that made my heart twist painfully in my chest. Where did you learn to do this? I asked when he'd finished, redressing Sophia in her onesie. I told you. Many nieces and nephews. He lifted Sophia, cradling her against his chest. Family is everything to us, Emma. Children are cherished, protected. The most important legacy we have. There was something in his voice, a depth of conviction, that made me believe him, at least about this. I want her to have a normal life, I said quietly. School friends, playground visits, birthday parties. Not guards in fear and isolation. Alessandro's expression softened as he looked down at our daughter. She can have those things, with proper precautions. Armed bodyguards at a children's birthday party isn't normal, Alessandro. Security can be discreet. He placed Sophia gently in her crib, adjusting her blanket with careful precision. And necessary, Emma. Even if I were just a wealthy restaurateur, she would need protection. The children of privilege always do. I couldn't argue with that logic, though I wanted to. The soft glow of the nursery nightlight cast shadows across Alessandro's face, highlighting the sharp angles of his cheekbones, the strong line of his jaw. He looked both dangerous and vulnerable, standing over our daughter's crib, and the contradiction made my heart race. Will you at least consider it? He asked, turning to face me. A real attempt at making this work, for her sake. For her sake. Not for his. Not for mine. For Sophia's. I'll try, I said finally. But I have conditions. Something like respect flickered in his eyes. Name them. I want to work, not just at La Stella. I want to explore other opportunities too. Consulting. Maybe teaching cooking classes. He nodded slowly. Acceptable. With proper security arrangements. I choose the staff that interacts with Sophia. Final say is mine. Within reason. All staff must pass my security checks. I took a deep breath. And I want honesty. No more secrets, Alessandro. If I'm going to raise our daughter in your world, I need to understand the risks. The real risks. He was silent for a long moment, considering. Then he stepped closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Feel the warmth radiating from his body. That's a dangerous request, Emma. Information is liability in my world. It's non-negotiable, I said firmly. I don't need operational details. Just context. Understanding. Alessandro studied my face, his dark eyes unreadable. Very well. But that honesty must go both ways. Meaning no more running, he said, his voice hardening slightly. No more secrets on your side either. If you're unhappy, if you're afraid, you come to me. Directly. No intermediaries. The implication was clear. No going to the authorities. No seeking outside help. Agreed, I said, knowing I had little choice. He nodded, seemingly satisfied. Then we have an understanding. We stood together in silence for a moment, watching Sophia's tiny chest rise and fall with her peaceful breaths. In sleep, her face relaxed into an expression of perfect innocence that made my throat tighten with emotion. She deserves better than both of us, I whispered. Perhaps, Alessandro agreed softly, but she has us nonetheless. We'll have to be better for her. It was the vulnerability in his voice that undid me, the rare admission that he, too, had doubts. Without thinking, I reached out, touching his arm gently. He went still under my touch, his eyes finding mine in the dim light. Stay, he said suddenly. Tonight, with both of you. I tensed, withdrawing my hand. Alessandro, not like that, he clarified quickly. Just here, in the apartment. I'll take the guest room. I just want... He trailed off, seeming uncharacteristically at a loss for words. Want what? I prompted. Time, he said finally. With my family. Family. That word again, loaded with meaning and expectation. All right, I conceded, surprising myself. But just tonight flickered across his features. Another crack in the impenetrable facade he usually presented to the world. With a gentle touch to Sophia's cheek, he straightened and moved toward the nursery door. I have calls to make, he said, his tone shifting back to businesslike efficiency. I'll be in the study. Will you be all right alone for a while? I almost smiled at that. I've been alone with her since she was born, Alessandro. I think I can manage. He paused, looking back at me. You're not alone anymore, Emma. Remember that. The words followed me as I moved through the evening routine, preparing bottles for night feedings, arranging diapers and wipes for easy access, taking a quick shower in the luxurious bathroom. Through the walls, I could hear the low murmur of Alessandro's voice as he conducted his business in the study. I wondered what he was discussing, who was on the other end of those calls. The legitimate side of his empire, or the shadow business I was trying not to think about. The line between seemed increasingly blurred the longer I spent in his orbit. By the time I crawled into the obscenely comfortable bed, exhaustion was pulling at my limbs, making my eyelids heavy. I left the door to the nursery open, the baby monitor on the nightstand nonetheless broadcasting Sophia's soft breathing. I must have fallen asleep almost instantly, because the next thing I knew, a small cry was pulling me from dreams. I blinked awake, disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings until memory rushed back. Alessandro's apartment, our new prison, or sanctuary, depending on how you looked at it. Sophia's cry came again, more insistent this time. I pushed back the silky sheets, ready to go to her, when a movement in the nursery caught my eye. Alessandro was already there, his tall frame bent over the crib, lifting Sophia with those surprisingly gentle hands. I watched, frozen in the doorway, as he cradled her against his chest, murmuring softly in Italian. Mi dispiace, piccola, he was saying. Sorry, little one. Papa è qui. Papa is here. Papa. Father. The word seemed to echo in the quiet room. He turned, spotting me in the doorway. She's hungry, I think, he said, his voice rough with sleep. I nodded, moving forward to take her. Our hands brushed during the transfer, sending an unwelcome jolt of awareness through me. Thank you, I said quietly, settling into the rocking chair to nurse. Alessandro didn't leave as I expected. Instead, he leaned against the wall, watching us with an intensity that should have made me uncomfortable, but somehow didn't. You should go back to sleep, I told him. No point in both of us being awake. I don't mind, he replied. I've slept enough. In the dim light, with his hair tousled from sleep and wearing just a t-shirt and pajama pants, he looked younger, more human. The Alessandro I'd first fallen for, before I knew the full truth of who he was. What are you thinking? He asked, catching my stare. That I don't know how to reconcile the different versions of you, I admitted, too tired for pretense. The man who tenderly holds his daughter and the man who, I trailed off, does what needs to be done, he finished. You don't have to reconcile them, Emma. Just accept that both exist. As Sophia nursed contentedly, her tiny hand wrapped around my finger, I wondered if I could do that, accept the contradiction that was Alessandro Vitali, father, lover, criminal. The man who had trapped me, but who was also, undeniably offering a kind of freedom I couldn't achieve alone. Security, stability, protection. One day at a time, I murmured, more to myself than to him. Alessandro pushed away from the wall, approaching to kneel beside the rocking chair. Gently, he brushed a strand of hair from my face, his fingers lingering against my cheek. One day at a time, he agreed softly. That's all any of us can do. 6 months passed in a strange new rhythm. Days of learning to be a mother, nights interrupted by Sophia's cries, and through it all, Alessandro's constant, watchful presence. Not always physically, he had his business to run after all, but his influence touched every aspect of our lives. Security men who discreetly followed when I took Sophia to the park, the private pediatrician who made house calls, the carefully vetted nanny who helped when I returned to La Stella 3 days a week, and Alessandro himself, who came for dinner almost every evening, who spent weekend mornings playing with Sophia on the plush carpet of the living room, who watched me with those dark, intense eyes that still made my heart race despite everything. We existed in a careful dance of co-parenting and unresolved tension. He never pushed for more, true to his word that he expected nothing I wasn't willing to give. But the air between us remained charged with possibilities, with memories of what had been and what might be again. Winter had melted into spring, and Sophia was thriving, sitting up now, babbling constantly, her personality emerging more each day. She had Alessandro's dark eyes and determined temperament, but my smile and curiosity, the perfect blend of us both. I was in the kitchen preparing dinner when I heard the apartment door open. Alessandro wasn't due for hours. He had meetings across town. He'd said that morning before leaving. I tensed, listening for the security system's warning chime, but there was only the sound of familiar footsteps. "Emma?" Alessandro's voice, tighter than usual. "In the kitchen," I called, turning down the flame under the simmering sauce. He appeared in the doorway, still in his business suit, but with his tie loosened, hair slightly disheveled, unusual for a man who maintained impeccable control over his appearance. "What's wrong?" I asked immediately, wiping my hands on a towel. "Where's Sophia?" "Napping. Maria is with her." Alarm crept into my voice. "Alessandro, what's happened?" He crossed to the refrigerator, pouring himself a glass of water and drinking it in one long swallow before answering. "There's been a situation." With the Cardano family, my blood ran cold. I'd learned enough about Alessandro's world over the past months to recognize the name of his chief rival family in New York's criminal hierarchy. "What kind of situation?" I asked cautiously. Alessandro's jaw tightened. "Nothing for you to worry about. It's being handled." "Don't do that," I said, anger flaring. "You promised honesty, remember? No more secrets." He studied me for a long moment, then nodded once, sharply. "Vincenzo Cardano's youngest son was arrested this morning. He believes we provided information to the authorities. Did you?" "No." Alessandro's voice was flat. "The idiot got caught in an FBI sting operation all on his own. But Vincenzo isn't thinking rationally. His son faces serious charges." I gripped the edge of the counter. "And this affects us how?" "It doesn't," Alessandro said firmly. "But as a precaution, I'm increasing security here and at La Stella. And I'll be staying here for a few nights." Not in the guest room as he had occasionally in the past. I realized from his expression, he meant with me. With us. "Is it really that serious?" I whispered. Alessandro moved closer, his hands coming to rest gently on my shoulders. "It's just a precaution, Tesoro. You and Sophia are well protected. But I would feel better being here." The genuine concern in his eyes made my protest die in my throat. Over the months, I'd seen this side of him more and more. The protector. The caretaker. It complicated the image I'd built of him as simply a dangerous criminal. "All right," I agreed softly. Relief flickered across his features. His hands slid down my arms in a gesture that was almost a caress before he stepped back, maintaining the careful distance he always kept between us. "I need to make some calls," he said. Then I'll help with dinner. I nodded, turning back to the stove as he disappeared toward the study. My hands trembled slightly as I stirred the sauce. Not entirely from fear, I realized with a jolt of surprise. Part of me welcomed the excuse for Alessandro to stay, to breach the careful separation we'd maintained. What did that say about me, about the woman I was becoming in this strange half-life? By the time Alessandro returned, I had managed to calm my thoughts and focus on finishing dinner. He'd changed into casual clothes, dark jeans and a simple gray Henley that did nothing to diminish his commanding presence. Situation resolved? I asked, setting plates on the kitchen island. In progress, he replied, coming to stand beside me. The additional security is in place. Anton is personally supervising. I nodded, oddly reassured. Anton had become something of a fixture in our lives, a steady presence whose loyalty to Alessandro was matched only by his surprising gentleness with Sophia. She should be waking soon, I said, glancing at the clock. As if on cue, the baby monitor on the counter lit up with sounds of Sophia stirring. I'll get her, Alessandro said, already moving toward the nursery. I watched him go, struck by how natural this domestic scene had become. Alessandro rushing to tend to his daughter, me preparing dinner in our shared home. If anyone had told me a year ago that I would be living this life, I would have called them insane. Yet, here we were, and the most unsettling part was how right it sometimes felt. I heard Alessandro's low voice through the monitor, speaking to Sophia in Italian as he always did. Her happy babble in response made me smile despite my lingering anxiety. They appeared a few minutes later, Sophia freshly changed and beaming in her father's arms. She reached for me immediately, and I took her, pressing a kiss to her soft cheek. "Mama," she said, one of her few clear words. "That's right, sweetheart," I murmured, settling her in her high chair. Mama made dinner for us. Alessandro watched us with an intensity that made my cheeks warm. "She grows more beautiful every day," he said softly. "Like her mother." I busied myself with preparing Sophia's food, avoiding his gaze. These moments of tenderness were the most dangerous, the times when I almost forgot why I had run from him in the first place. We ate dinner in a strangely comfortable silence, interrupted only by Sophia's babbling and occasional spills, as she insisted on trying to feed herself. Alessandro watched her with undisguised pride, cleaning her face with a patience I never would have expected from him. "I've been thinking," he said as I cleared the plates, "about your desire for normalcy for Sophia." I glanced at him warily. "And? There's a property in Connecticut, secluded, secure. We could spend weekends there. Give her space to play outdoors without constant vigilance." The offer took me by surprise. "You'd leave the city? Your business?" "For weekends, yes." He reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine briefly. "For both of you, I would make adjustments." The gesture, so small yet so significant, made my heart stutter. I pulled my hand away gently. "Let me think about it," I said. He nodded, accepting my hesitation without pushback, another change from the controlling man I'd first known. We settled into the evening routine, bathing Sophia, reading her stories, putting her to bed. Alessandro took over the final step, rocking her gently while singing an Italian lullaby in his surprisingly melodic voice. I watched from the doorway, emotion tightening my chest at the tenderness on his usually guarded face. "She's asleep," he whispered finally, carefully laying Sophia in her crib. I nodded, suddenly acutely aware that the moment I'd been avoiding had arrived. Bedtime, with Alessandro staying. He seemed to read my thoughts, a disconcerting ability he'd always had. "I can take the sofa," he offered quietly as we left the nursery. "Don't be ridiculous," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "The bed is huge. We're adults." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Are you sure, Emma? It's just sleep, Alessandro." His dark eyes held mine for a long moment. "If that's what you want." "I don't know what I want anymore," I admitted softly. It was the most honest thing I'd said in months. Alessandro reached out slowly, giving me time to retreat, and brushed his knuckles against my cheek. "Then we'll wait until you do." That night, lying beside him in the darkness, separated by just inches of cool sheets, I found myself revisiting the path that had brought us here, the fear and anger that had driven me to flee with our unborn child, the months of running and hiding, the shock of his reappearance in my hospital room, and then the gradual shift since then. The Alessandro I'd come to know as Sophia's father, patient, gentle, fiercely protective. The man who ran a criminal empire yet read bedtime stories with different voices for each character. The contradiction that both terrified and fascinated me. "You're thinking too loudly." His voice came through the darkness, startling me. I turned to find him watching me, his profile illuminated by the faint light filtering through the curtains. "Sorry," I murmured. "Don't apologize." He shifted to face me fully. "Tell me what's keeping you awake." I hesitated, then decided on honesty. I was thinking about how complicated this has all become. Us, this life. Complicated how? I left because I was afraid of who you are. What you do, I said slowly. I wanted to protect Sophia from that world. "And now?" he prompted when I fell silent. "Now I'm not sure what I'm protecting her from anymore. Or if I'm protecting her at all." Alessandro was quiet for a moment, considering my words. "You're giving her stability, a father who adores her, security. That's protection, Emma. But at what cost?" I whispered. "The moral compromises I make every day, by staying here, accepting this life." He propped himself up on one elbow, his expression serious in the dim light. "Let me ask you something. In these 6 months, have I ever asked you to participate in anything illegal? To compromise your principles in any way?" "No," I admitted. "Have I kept my promise to separate that part of my life from you and Sophia?" "Yes, but..." "Then perhaps the compromise isn't as great as you believe," he interrupted gently. "Perhaps you're still viewing this in absolutes, good and evil, right and wrong." "Aren't some things absolute?" I challenged. Alessandro's lips curved slightly. "Very few, in my experience. Most of life exists in shades of gray. That's a convenient philosophy for someone in your position. Perhaps," he acknowledged. "Or perhaps it's simply true." I had no answer for that. In the silence that followed, Alessandro's hand found mine atop the covers, his fingers intertwining with mine in a gesture that felt more intimate than any kiss. "What do you want, Emma?" he asked quietly. "Not for Sophia, not for me, for yourself." The question caught me off guard. For so long, my wants and needs had been subjugated to survival, to motherhood, to fear. What did I want? "I want to stop being afraid," I whispered finally. "Of you, of the future, of my own feelings." His hand tightened on mine. "And what are those feelings?" I met his gaze in the darkness, complicated, confused, angry sometimes, but also, he prompted when I trailed off. Instead of answering with words, I closed the distance between us, pressing my lips to his in a tentative kiss. Alessandro remained perfectly still for a heartbeat, then responded with carefully restrained passion, his free hand coming up to cup my face. When we finally broke apart, both breathing harder, he rested his forehead against mine. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice rougher than usual. "No," I admitted. "I'm not sure of anything, but I'm tired of fighting this. Whatever it is between us." Alessandro brushed his thumb across my lower lip. "I told you once I would wait until you knew what you wanted. That hasn't changed. And if what I want is just for tonight?" I asked. "If tomorrow I'm still confused, still uncertain about this life, then we'll have tonight," he said simply. "And tomorrow will be tomorrow." His honesty, his willingness to accept my terms. It was another crack in the fortress I'd built around my heart. "I missed you," I confessed, the words slipping out before I could stop them. "Even when I hated you for finding us, for forcing me back here, I missed you." Alessandro pulled me closer, his arms encircling me with surprising gentleness. "I missed you every moment you were gone, Tesoro. Every single moment." A year later, I stood on the deck of the Connecticut house, watching as Alessandro pushed Sophia on the swing he'd installed beneath the old oak tree. Her delighted laughter carried across the expansive lawn, mixing with the chirping of birds and the distant sound of the stream that marked the property's boundary. The weekend retreat had become a regular part of our lives, along with many other changes. I was now running my own small cooking school in a space adjacent to La Stella, teaching classes 3 days a week while still overseeing the restaurant's menu. Alessandro had made adjustments too, delegating more of his business to trusted lieutenants, spending more time with us, creating the separation between his worlds that I had once thought impossible. Was it perfect? No. There were still moments of fear when I glimpsed the darker side of his life. A tense phone call, an unexpected security threat, the deferential fear with which some people still treated him. But there were also moments of surprising joy and normalcy, Sunday dinners with his mother and sisters, Sophia's first steps, captured on video and replayed countless times, quiet evenings when it was just the three of us, a family in spite of everything. "What are you thinking about so seriously?" Alessandro asked, coming up behind me with Sophia in his arms, her little head resting on his shoulder, eyes heavy with impending nap time. "Us," I said honestly. "This life we've built. It's not what I imagined." "Better or worse?" he asked, shifting Sophia to his other arm when she squirmed. I considered the question carefully. Different, complicated, but ours. Alessandro smiled, a genuine smile that still transformed his face, made him look younger, more carefree. I can live with that assessment. As he carried Sophia inside for her nap, I remained on the deck, reflecting on the journey that had brought us here, from fear to understanding, from hiding to acceptance, from running to choosing to stay. I had hidden my baby from the Mafia boss until he saw the birth certificate with his name, but in doing so, I had inadvertently found my way to a life I never could have imagined. Complex, challenging, but undeniably rich with love and possibility. The path forward wouldn't always be easy. Alessandro's world would always contain shadows I couldn't fully understand or accept, but we had found our balance, our compromise, our own definition of family, and for today, that was enough.